Hey there friends and folks, today I wanted to make some beaded chains with you. It's a very simple but time-consuming process as you're essentially just doing one technique over and over again. If you aren't already comfortable with your wire-wrapped link, you are about to be, but you can also check out my how-to video linked down in the description. The tools you'll need today are your chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, wire cutters, and you'll see some appearances made by my needle nose as well, but if you don't have needle nose you can just use your chain nose. I'll be making two different beaded chains today. For the first, I'll be using these baby aquamarine rounds and this 24 gauge copper wire. And for the second, we're getting a bit funkier with these lapis and aquamarine pieces and a 22 gauge wire. I've started out by attaching my first wire wrapped link to the loop half of my toggle clasp. And we're going to just keep adding links until we've reached our desired length, which for this piece is going to be about 16 inches. Because these babies are so teeny tiny, I want to make my links as minimal as possible. When working with stones and loops this small, this is where I'll whip out those needle nose pliers instead of my chain nose, because that finer nose really helps me get in there and work those tiny links. You'll notice that rather than cutting individual segments of wire for each link, I'm cutting several inches of wire at a time and making several links out of that one segment. I personally find that this minimizes my wire waste, but also allows me to more frequently create my wraps with my hands, which is my preferred method of wrapping. You'll often see me, instead of using the pliers to make a certain movement, I'll hold the pliers stationary and utilize my free hand to work the wire around the pliers nose. This is just a personal habit I've gotten into, and this method of working down off of longer lengths of wire is very conducive to that work style. So as I mentioned earlier, I want to make this piece about 16 inches. I usually aim for 18-inch necklace lengths with a 2-inch extender chain for versatility, but because this piece is so dainty, I want it to sit higher on the neckline. I'll continue to measure my piece as I go, and as I get to just under 16 inches, I'll attach the bar half of my toggle clasp with my final link. And this is a point where you want to be very aware of how large of loops you're making. With toggle clasps, especially one this small, keep in mind that the loop attached to the bar side of the toggle will need to fit through the hoop side. So if you make the loop attached to your bar too big, you won't be able to actually close your clasp. So I've officially attached my toggle, and that is it. A gorgeous, simple beaded chain. Now for this funky chain. I really love these lapis pieces and wanted to make something with these to highlight their unique cut, but in looking at them I suspect I don't have enough to make a full 18-inch chain. So I have these equally super fun aquamarine pieces that I think will go well with the lapis and copper. And if you haven't caught on yet, I love pairing blue and green and turquoise stones with copper. I think it's just such a gorgeous contrast. Some of my most commonly used stones are lapis, aquamarine, and amazonite, and I almost always pair them with copper. Now, as you saw from my aquamarine necklace earlier, I started with my clasp and built out from there. But for this piece, I'm going to add my clasp at the end, and that is a decision of absolutely no consequence. So I'm just going to get to wrapping. I'm going to alternate my lapis and aquamarine pieces and just keep going until I reach about 17.5 inches. For this piece, I want to use a lobster clasp because I may decide to add an extender chain later, and a lobster clasp allows me that option. I'll attach the clasp to one end, and on the other I'm going to add one final link, but I'm going to make that end loop bigger than the rest of the loops I've done to allow the lobster clasp an easier hold. If I want to add an extender chain now, I could do that before wrapping off this loop, but I really like the length of this necklace and low-key might keep it for myself, so I'm just going to loop it off for now. I can always attach an extender later with a jump ring should I decide I want to sell this piece. And there you have it, 2 simple, straightforward beaded chains. The same technique used to create 2 pieces with very different impact. I do want to share these other beaded chains with you that I've made for my personal collection. This first one, instead of attaching beaded links to each other, I've spaced out the links with some chain segments for this elegantly long piece. I actually made this after being inspired by a necklace I saw on one of my favorite TV shows, and I love it because it can be worn long or wrapped around with this simple yet beautiful toggle showing off in the front. The second chain I made to be another fun, funky piece, but instead of using funkier beads, I chose to do my wraps a little funkier. I even graduated the size of these loops going around my necklace. This messy wrap is something I'll go over in one of my next videos, in which I'll show you 3 different ways you can spice up your wire wraps. But for now, thank you all so much for tuning in. Please let me know if you have any questions down below, and I will do my best to answer them. Till next time, take care and bead well.